The all-new RTS Rattenreich is back with some new released gameplay. The developers decided they'd upload some long-form stuff on their channel, and we get a proper look at one of the missions that we get to play in the all-new fantasy-inspired World War II RTS. As a quick overview, Rattenreich is technically based in World War II, but, well, there's a slight change. There's rats, there's cockroaches, there's mice, it kind of goes a little bit insane. The Skaven definitely are invading, and it is terrifying. But let's take a look at this gameplay. First of all, I want to say the graphics actually look really nice. This is not a AAA budget game, or not even the team itself. It's fairly small, but especially things like the lighting and the terrain detail, the way the mud and the water works together, and the trees as well, seeing the textures on the pines. Each individual needle on those trees looks really, really nice. Of course, this game will be compatible with NVIDIA RTX from launch, so if you have the capabilities to introduce that to your gameplay, it will look even better and, well, hopefully not completely tank it. It seems like it's running pretty well. This mission that you see is commanding just one squad. This is not quite like a Company of Heroes or Men of War kind of game. It's not necessarily on that kind of big scale. Will it be possible to go on those larger scales? I assume it would be, but these missions are more like the Men of War strategy missions where you have sniper squads or an infantry squad and you have to complete certain objectives, whether it's stealthily or going all out shouting with your guns. But this is following one commander squad, and we get to see a little bit of a first look at the map design. We've seen some stuff in trenches which look really nice, but this is a bit more open, moving through the forests. I think the design is going to offer up a lot of opportunities. You see, they designed it so there are multiple ways to complete each mission, whether you want to flank enemies, go up the front, use cover, or sneak around the side, accomplishing objectives in completely unique ways that can be replayed over and over again. Maybe you don't quite complete it running straight up the front, so you split your squad in half and you're able to get a flanking detachment around the side. There are things like gas grenades, which look absolutely terrifying. You're going to have to command your units to put on their gas masks. Regular frag grenades and smokes will also be important, and, well, as we see later, frag grenades can be just as deadly to your own troops if you don't quite use them right. Sound design is very, very promising. The guns have a lot of weight to their shots. The grenade explosions sound really beefy, and I think that's really important for a title like this. You want the guns to feel like they've actually got power behind them and are based on realistic weaponry. Something that I have to say is that AI looks a little bit dodgy sometimes. They kind of seem to be just walking past each other. I mean, it looks fine and it looks workable, especially when you're micromanaging, putting them in different positions and getting them to fire on certain targets. However, you do see multiple times that AI gets a little bit confused when they're not being directly controlled by the player themselves, and specifically the other team. They don't definitely understand who's the enemy and who isn't, or at least that's what I can see from this bit of gameplay. It's really paramount to make the AI and the controls and micromanaging work in conjunction with each other, especially making the controls slick and usable, but also making them intricate enough for good micromanaging. There seems to be a decent amount of this, nowhere near on a level of a Men of War Assault Squad 2, but this seems to be a little bit less of a hardcore and a little bit more of an arcadey side, maybe moving a bit towards the Company of Heroes style of RTS gameplay. And then we get to see a bit further into maps. I love the models on the buildings, this fantasy style but still grounded in reality and the dark nature of the dirt of World War II. It's looking to be a really nice balance, and from my last video that I made about this game, people seemed really popular about this new take. Getting this historical realism is somewhat important, but when you decide to go a different way and represent it in a fantastical manner, this seems like to be the way to do it. And it seems the developers have actually taken a lot of time to mix the reality and mix the metaphors within each other, which essentially is what this is about. One thing that I thought was really interesting about this new gameplay and the commentary that came with it was the talk about the map design itself. How not only has it been used to make it better for the RTS, having different directions and multiple ways to complete missions with different routes and bits of cover to use, but also keeping in mind a potential of a first-person mode in the future, being able to get down and dirty and fight alongside your men. We've actually seen this before in a game called Call of Arms. It was more of a spiritual successor to the Men of War franchise, which I don't seem to be able to not mention these days. But that too includes this FPS variant and twist on the RTS genre. You have all the controls that you'd expect from a generic RTS game, having the top-down command of the troops and being able to micromanage them with actions and movements. But you're also able to select a troop, take control, use the scopes on their weapons, and play it like you would an FPS game. It adds a completely new dynamic, and being a completely optional thing means that if you don't like that kind of thing, you don't have to use it and play it like a regular RTS, but if you want to, you can get a really interesting perspective on the battles that we don't normally see from these angles. And it's really interesting that I think that whilst they don't have it just yet, they're designing the maps with the potential to add that FPS part in the future. Some other small things are, of course, being able to throw grenades and micromanage that, hand-to-hand combat as well. You see a guy getting stabbed with the bayonet. Overall, it looks a little bit less micromanagey than a game like Men of War. It looks more on the arcadey side, but that's not really a problem. These kind of games, for me, are all about the immersion, trying to feel like you are part of this army, whether you're a general or down on foot with the men, but this is pretty hard for an RTS to do. When you're over the top, you kind of feel a little bit separated from your troops and the army and the battle in general, so it is a lot harder for a game to immerse a player within the scenarios that they're playing. But it looks like they're doing a fantastic job with this, with the graphic design, with the dark and dingy attitude towards World War II, with the artistry and the creativity with the soldiers and the troops that you'll be using. Later on, hopefully we'll see some stuff with vehicles, but also the sound design. The sound design is one of the most important parts for immersing you within this, to make it feel like you are in that explosion when it goes off, and I think Rat and Reich is doing a great job to try and include these sorts of things. The game initially over doubled its target on Kickstarter, making it an incredibly hyped and successful title that has had a lot of funding behind it, and because of this they've been able to expand a little bit more. The campaign will discover different fronts of World War II, not just, Europe, and it looks like we're going to be heading into North Africa as well, which is a campaign in the front that is rarely represented in a lot of World War II titles. There's going to be so many different factions. Of course, you're going to have the main ones like UK, Germany, USA, but also some less represented ones in World War II games, such as Canada and Korea, and eventually we're going to have a massive plethora of different factions that we're going to be able to play as, all having their unique troops and, of course, preferred gameplay styles. What's more is there is going to be a definite focus on realistic deaths and explosions, which feel a little bit brutal, especially when you get hit by a grenade or an artillery shell, and there's just one thing I'd actually like to finish off with this. The last time that I made a video about this game and talked about it on the channel, I mentioned that the gameplay did look a little bit clunky. Maybe that was just the selected clip they decided to show off, but I'm really happy to say that with this new bit of gameplay and with this new representation of the title, it looks like they've done some great work in order to smooth it out a little bit. It looks way more fast flowing, and it means that it's probably going to be a better experience for faster played games. The single player is pretty much all we've been shown so far. There is talk about it coming onto console in the future, but as we know with RTS games, it's a lot trickier to port them onto a console variant once you've designed it for PC. It might be quite cool, especially if they're bringing in an FPS variant of the RTS battles, but I think it's all up in the air at this point in time. But let me know what you think. Do you think Rat and Reich is still very promising? The game is currently set to release in September of 2022, but with no official targeted date. That's probably still questionable at this point in time. But leave a comment down below on your opinions, leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it, leave a dislike if you didn't. But until then, I will see you in the next one.